this meeting to order at 5:30. Our first item on the agenda is reorganization of the select board, which I'm not sure there's going to be a whole lot of, but we're going to. So, historically, we have had some variation on rotation of the positions, the officer positions, but it's always pretty negotiable as to whether somebody does or doesn't want to take any one of the roles. And you're confident that you don't want the role of chair?
Actually, Karen and I talked about it, and I have I've stepped back from some other things, so I think as long as you're willing to be very supportive and share all that enormous amount of knowledge that you have, I think that I'd be willing to do it.
Okay.
But I'm definitely I'm gonna need you to continue to coaching and stepping in at times in the way that you have done in the past.
Yeah. No, I'm fine with that.
Okay.
And you have been the clerk. You comfortable being vice chair?
Yeah, absolutely.
So if I'll make a motion that we appoint Laura as chair, David as vice chair, and myself as clerk.
How about you as vice chair and me as clerk? Because
We could do that too.
Sure, let's
Would
do
you
that.
prefer that?
I would prefer that.
Okay,
Thank you
so
very much.
I'll amend, but not amend it. I'll not make that first motion and move that we nominate Laura as chair, myself as vice chair, and David as clerk.
And I'll second that.
So it's been moved and seconded. Leaves it open for discussion. Is there any comment or questions about that? And or any other input? Then all those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. All right,
This is your meeting, Laura.
there you go.
Oh dear. Okay, are there any adjustments to the agenda?
No.
And we'll move on to approval of minutes.
I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes of February 26th as presented.
And I second that.
Okay, is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 And now this is, I'm gonna take it, it's gonna take a little while to get used to this.
All right.
Public comment on items not on the agenda. Mr. Fairman.
First, I'd mentioned to Mr. Laughlin that when one is making a motion, before the question has been stated, you're completely free to do anything you want to your motion.
Yes.
Until
it's been seconded. Yes.
No, in fact, after it's been seconded, the question has to be stated. So you think about it in town meeting terms, motion, second, only after the moderator says, we have a motion that, which states the question, only then is the motion frozen because it's on the floor.
Okay.
Before that, you're perfectly free to do whatever you want. So for example, if the moderator says, I don't think that's in order, actually, it's the moderator's duty to help you formulate the motion,
Right.
so it is in order.
Yeah.
And everybody thinks that somehow we've committed ourselves, but we haven't. It's only when it goes on the floor, because after that, it belongs to the voters, not to.
Right.
Anyway, I am actually going to mention 2 or 3 things about town meeting that I think are worthy of note and possible follow-up. First one is I take the liberty of suggesting that before 2021 Putney Town Meeting is called to order, our elected legislative and school board representatives and Putney Central School principal be invited to address us briefly, which could be stated in the introduction to the town meeting warning. Second, that the remote open meeting law somehow prevents Wyndham Southeast school board members from addressing their constituents before town meetings is incorrect. because we are who elected them to represent us, and they are accountable to us, pursuant to the Vermont Open Meeting Law's Declaration of Public Policy, citing the Constitution of the state of Vermont. Thirdly, and last, Putney Central School Principal Pelletier told us that enrollment is growing due in part to young families living at Wyndham and Windsor Housing Trust's new Putney Landing development, where there are 6 smaller units apparently occupied by older folks and 12 larger units apparently occupied by young families. One can see more young families at WWHT's earlier redevelopment of the Dr. Laura Plant's house. Unlike many Vermont towns, Putney is growing because Wyndham and Windsor Housing Trust is creating affordable homes here for young families while also growing the grand list.
Correct.
That's the most important thing I heard at town meeting.
It's good news. I mean, sorry, may I comment?
Yeah, go for it.
We've had an ongoing discussion about affordable housing in Putney for a long time, and there was a study done back in probably 2007, something like that, where we were shown to be in the ballpark of 100 units short of what we needed in affordable housing at that time. Because of Putney Meadows, we had a reasonable supply of senior housing at reasonably affordable rates, but equations around that have shifted a little bit. But we have now added, I think it's 16 at Plant's house, 15 or 16 at Plant's house, and 18 at Putney, combined Putney Landing, 18 at Putney Landing and 6 more up at Noy's house. So that's the addition of 40 units, which is good. It's been a long time coming, but even based on data that's 10 plus years old, we still need more, definitely. So it's an ongoing process.
We're 60 units short on data that's 10 years old.
Yeah, and I don't know what that means as far as how accurate that data would be in today's market, but anecdotally, we can certainly see, the vacancy rate in Putney is almost non-existent. As far as affordability is concerned, we're all aware that rates are not low. So, my sense would be that there's definitely a continued need. How accurate reconciling that data from 10 years ago would be, I don't know. But I think more units is in our best interest for the reasons Mr. Fairman has highlighted.
I agree.
In that regard, people say Vermont's losing population. Actually, 5 counties in Vermont are growing. And this is based on actual births and actual deaths.
Yeah.
So there's no estimates there. Because the town clerks have to send everything in to the Vermont Department of Health. Well, I'm working on a study to try to identify what the factors are that make these 5 counties, which are Chittenden County and the counties surrounding it.
Yeah.
Why are they doing so well? But as a result of what Principal Pelletier said, I'd not thought about that. I'm going to see if I can tease out something about affordable housing. Because of course, when you look at the births and deaths are only available for counties.
Right.
But of course, within a county, there can be a big difference.
Yes.
And for example, Putney's population school enrollment is growing, so the population must be. But I doubt that applies to most Wyndham County towns.
No, I think
But,
that's probably true.
Sorry, go ahead.
That's probably true. I think you're right.
So I'm curious whether affordable housing may be a factor, because when you think of it, young families are going to be where they can find a place to live. And of course, that's where they'll have their kids and raises the population, and they go to the school and so on.
Yeah.
So it all connects, but the question is just how does it connect here and there? Because we know for sure that up in northwestern Vermont, they're doing fine, population-wise.
Yeah. No, in fact, they're facing a lot of development pressure in areas that they don't necessarily want it. Development pressure on ag land, et cetera.
Yes.
That's complicated for them. So.
But on the other hand, if you take a look at the median adjusted gross incomes in Vermont towns, Vermont is at about 39,000, Putney's at about 36,000. Okay, but Burlington, way up there in prosperous Vermont, is at a little around $30,000 a year.
Is that right?
Yeah, these are the latest available figures, 2017. But of course, then you look at places like Shelburne, and on the other, it's way up.
That's interesting.
Hi, can you sign in, please?
Is the sign in on
Madam
that?
Chair.
Oh, thank you. So, does anybody else have any comments on items not on the agenda? Okay, then we will move on to select board items. So first is State of Vermont lease space for Vermont Hazard Emergency Response Vehicle, and Tom, I assume that's you.
Yep. What that is, we're not ready to bring that forward tonight, just because other things have been taking priority.
Okay.
Essentially though, what it is it pertains to the state of Vermont giving us what is their portion of funding, which is their portion of our new exhaust system down at the firehouse, and the costs associated to get that truck hooked into the system.
Okay.
So they've chosen to ask us to enter into a lease agreement with them, so that everything is out on the table, ironed out, so on and so forth. So we'll definitely be bringing that on the meeting on the 25th.
Okay, so we're tabling that for now. Moving on, a request to approve a new private road name for the purpose of obtaining a 911 address. And that is you as well?
It's in your packet.
This is a private driveway that has been a private driveway serving 2 homes off of Taylor Road. A piece of property was recently purchased and is going to be developed, which will make the third address off of that private driveway. So given that, in order to stay compliant with the 911 regulations, that road needs to have an official name adopted for it and assigned to it. Herring Lane, where that comes from, is years ago, all that property along Taylor Road was owned by the Herring family. So we just kind of pulled that. We've written letters to the residents that are presently served by that driveway. They've been notified that this is coming. They're very well aware that that's going to be a non-town maintained road. It's going to be private. So all that's been addressed as well.
So you just choose the name when we need a new name for a road?
Yep.
Okay. And do residents get any say in that?
Absolutely, and they've been asked for input and we received none.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, and I would say as often as not, the residents propose a name.
yes, 99 times out
Yeah.
of 100, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Do we need to approve this, or do we need to make a motion on this? Okay.
I'll make a motion that we approve applying the name Herring Lane as a 911 address for, do we have a parcel number?
No.
For property as described on Taylor Road. Yep. Second that.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And no nays. No abstentions. Okay, moving on, we propose April 8th, 2020 at 5 p.m. for a sidewalk ribbon cutting ceremony.
So I've been in contact with Landmark College, John McLaren,
Okay.
and they were asking about a ribbon cutting ceremony. So April 8th would be a select board meeting night. I proposed 5 p.m. We'd meet on Vinegar Lane,
Okay.
and some of the students from the college would like to be there.
And they will be back by then.
Well, given what's going on right
Yeah.
now,
Question.
Yeah.
it's questionable right now.
Okay. So it's tentative. We'll plan on it, but
Yeah, I can schedule it tentatively, but it may get pushed back.
Yeah.
okay.
But I think it's a great idea.
Okay,
I mean, the sidewalk is complete.
yeah,
I think it deserves at least the ribbon cutting.
yeah, with the amount of effort that went into
Right.
it. Do we need a motion for that, or?
I don't think so, no, especially since it's proposed, I mean,
Yeah.
Right.
I think it's fine.
We'll just do a special meeting.
Okay.
I'll post it and then, but I'll make sure with Landmark that somebody will be available.
Okay.
Otherwise, I might push it back to the second one in April, which would be the 22nd.
Okay, potentially the 22nd.
Yeah.
May the public ask a question
Yeah.
of the town manager? As you recall, first snowstorm we had, a plow driver up there at Vinegar Lane
Yeah.
simply drove the plow through the guardrail.
It's not fixed yet.
And I was curious if something's being done about that.
Yes, Brian, as soon as the snow is out of the way, and we know there's not gonna be any more snow, the highway department will be fixing that section. We're gonna look at that too, to
Yeah.
see if if we can bring it around a little bit.
There's a conversation that I heard amongst plow drivers is there's really no other place to put the snow, and so that fixing it may just,
Right.
it could inevitably happen again.
That wasn't a town truck that,
I'm still not sure if it was a contractor or a town truck. So, it will get fixed,
A chain instead of something solid or something that moved with the snow.
right,
or
yeah,
something.
a little
Yeah.
more space to allow for snow
Yeah.
or.
flexibility
Yeah.
or something.
Flexibility.
But
so
we'll
much
figure
better
it
than
out, and it'll
space.
be
You
fixed.
never know when you're gonna cut a
Yeah.
square in a big storm.
Yeah.
We'll fix it prior to any ribbon cutting ceremony.
I wasn't necessarily suggesting that, I just thought it was because as far as I know, I'm the one who discovered it walking by there. And,
Yeah, it's been on social media too, so
yeah,
I just haven't responded. So,
I mean, at least we could take the boards down before, so it's just the poles standing. It's that, I don't think that would look bad. But
no, I'll get Brian on it, clean it up.
anything else? Sandglass Theater request to apply for USDA RBDG.
Alyssa?
Hi.
Hi.
Letting me interlope in your meetings.
Alyssa, can you stand up, please?
Yeah, of course.
Just for the-
Of course.
Sit in the front.
No, I'm happy to stand.
Thank you.
So thank you so much for letting us bring this to the town. Many of you know Sandglass Theater. I've seen many of you there. We have undergone a period of doing a strategic plan and implementing a number of things of our strategic plan. And one of the things that we have an issue with is our computing equipment. And we're very interested in, and the USDA Rural Development Grant is interested in also supporting our bid for buying equipment. But in order to do so, we need a partner. We cannot apply for equipment on our own behalf. So we are coming to the town and asking if the town would be willing to make an application on our behalf that we would, of course, supply all the writing for. What I've been told by the USDA is because there's no single piece of computing equipment that is more than $2,000. This would be a relatively easy grant in that it would be an application. We would purchase the equipment and then the grant would close. We would be responsible for maintaining the equipment for the average life of computing equipment, which is currently 3.3 years. We tend to use our equipment significantly longer than that. Our current equipment is either 10 years old or personal equipment, which is one of the reasons we need to buy new equipment. So that's what we're asking. The total amount of the grant that we're currently asking for is $8,730.
And what are you gonna get with that?
3 tablets, 1 monitor, and 1 laptop. The tablets are so that not only can we run our own box office and use our online ticketing service, but when we take our performances outside of our own house, we can also do ticketing there.
Nice.
So I have a question, Alyssa.
Mhm.
So the letter of intent, so you're gonna send this in with the application?
Well, we sent the letter of intent into the USDA and they came back to us and said, we'd love to support this, but you can't
But we
apply on
need
your own behalf.
Municipality, okay. And do you have the application now?
On me, I do not. It's due on March 31st.
And someone at Sunglass is gonna,
Write it up.
and you'll bring it here.
I would be happy to.
Okay.
And then what is needed from you?
So from the town, what would,
The town would then have
Signature?
to be the applicant.
right,
So the town actually has to put the application through. We cannot put the application through.
so that would be signature from the select board or,
It would be a vote on the vote from the select board.
yeah,
I mean, I guess my recommendation at this point would be to, my opinion would be that we would express support for your continuing in the application process of this grant, and when you have an application completed, to bring it to us for review and our approval, and/or for us to accept the responsibility of submitting it on your behalf. But we need to see a completed application
Of
before we
course.
could
That
do
means we
that.
need it next
I
meeting.
believe your next meeting is on the 25th.
correct.
Great.
So if it's due on the 31st, we would have to have it for that meeting.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank
Thank you.
Putney Historical Society lease agreement response.
You have the letter.
We do.
Do.
Yeah.
So we've reviewed the draft lease agreement, and the thing that stood out was the term of the lease. And we'd like to see a much longer term that would give us perhaps more incentive for applying for grants and working with the town to make improvements to the second floor to make it usable.
Can you remind me what was the term that we had before?
It was
We
either-
reduced the 99 years.
Yeah, I thought we put 5 in there. So every 5 years it would, and I don't have it with me tonight, it's in my office.
Do you happen to have it?
Let's see. It says a year-to-year basis, automatically renewed on a year-to-year basis.
Oh, maybe that's what Larry
There's a
recommended.
reason.
Yeah,
Where do we do that? Well, it was recommendation of council, but I don't know, yeah, year to year,
I thought we agreed to like a 5-year.
I thought we agreed to.
Because
More
1
than
year
a
would be,
year.
administratively, that would be a nightmare.
yeah. Can I comment?
Hmm.
Yeah, you know.
I mean, I think that the town, I think my sense is, under advice of council, we'd be hesitant to agree to a 99-year lease. I think that, you know, the consensus, certainly among this board, is that we'd love to see you up there, and that we all would love you to be there for at least 99 years. But I think that council has advised us that as a municipality, we would probably not be wise to grant you a 99-year lease because it ties our hands in ways that we wouldn't want. So I think that, you know, we should probably consider the language. I'm certainly, year to year sounds too short. You know, whether, I think we should probably re-ask council for
Yes.
their advice, but, you know, somewhere, my feeling would be if it were a 5 to 10 year lease and automatically renewed unless sort of overturned kind of thing, I would hope that would give you the assurance you would want, but I don't know.
Yeah, with an automatic renewal.
Exactly, you know, that essentially unless it got voted down by a sitting select board, which could happen, that it would happen without having to go through that process.
Right.
So, and then I think the other thing that came to my attention was the idea of reimbursement for grants that were granted. I don't think I would personally vote in favor of that. I mean, I think if you guys garner grant money and it's supporting a town entity, then that's a town entity. I think that there might be exceptions to that, but that doesn't seem like it's necessarily in our best interest. You know, you guys could change your mind after the first 5-year lease was up and want to go somewhere else, and then you're going to hold us responsible. And maybe that's not the way the wording is, but I don't think that's in our best interest. But yeah, you got a hand up.
Yeah.
I think the intent was not to be reimbursed for the grants, but reimbursed for the time spent in obtaining the grants, because it does take quite a bit of time to research what grants are available and then apply for them and so on. And that process alone may take more than a year. And then once we get a grant, then there's going to have to be, let's say, a committee between the town and the Historical Society to make sure all the work is done appropriately. And it may take years before we could even get in there, but we wouldn't be asking for reimbursement for the grants, but for our time and effort. I think that was the intent.
Okay.
I think that we should have council look at that before we even discuss it.
That's a good idea.
Mr. Fairman?
I'll just mention that what you folks are talking about in legal parlance is called leasehold improvements.
Right.
And there's all kinds of standard business practices for dealing with that.
Yes.
So certainly it can be worked out.
Yeah. No, and again, my personal feeling would be you've definitely got a supportive select board, and we're happy to sort of work through these questions, but you know, we have a responsibility, obviously, to taxpayers to have reasonable answers before we proceed with them. So as far as that question is concerned, I don't know. That's definitely that's a new one for me. So how council would advise us on that, I don't know.
Okay, I can ask about that.
Yeah.
So reimbursed for time.
Mr. Fairman?
I just realized at previous meetings here, I've heard talk, I believe, about upstairs not being up to code in various ways. In terms of the Historical Society occupying that space, how is not being up to code being dealt with?
Actually, Tom, you could probably answer that they're within code as long as they use it in like a limited capacity, correct?
Technically speaking, no. However, locally, there are agreements in place where we would issue a variance to allow very minimal occupancy for very short time frames, and for very specific reasons. And then through the, I'm going to assume, and if I'm speaking out of turn, please drive me away, but I'm going to assume that through the proposed renovation construction process, then the building will be brought up, that area and the rest of the building will be brought up to code.
Yeah, I certainly think that's the intent, and I think that's that time period that you're talking about of it being, could be years before, you know, I mean, I think that we all agree that in small quantities, people can be there, you know, I mean, the Historical Society, I think, could function there without a problem as it is. Could you have a large gathering? No. And we're all aware of that. So that lag between now and when you could have a large gathering there is essentially that sort of grant period. But I also, you know, I mean, I think that we are aware, or I'm aware, that there are improvements, ongoing improvements to the building that we want to do. You know, I don't think it would be my personal opinion anyway that we would expect you all to take all of that on your own. I think that things that are very specific to your purposes, perhaps, you know, a sprinkler system and an elevator being the most notable, But if there are sort of general building improvements that are also things that fall under that, you know, improvement and making it more usable for you, I think we're likely to be supportive of those goals.
So,
Yeah, well, if we knew what the building improvements were that you
Right.
needed throughout the building, then we could see, hey, maybe we can help with
Yes.
this. Because we don't want to have the town spend money unnecessarily when we could have gotten a
Right.
grant for it.
Yes. And I think that, yeah, I mean, we're sort of saying the same thing in a horse and a cart sort of way. I mean, I think we'd all like to support each other through that process, and hopefully the building benefits all of us in that process as well. And that, you know, as we all like to do, garner as much money, grant money as we possibly can, certainly, so.
may I ask
But-
a question? Carolyn, how long would it take, do you think, to obtain grant money? Do you think like 10 years, 15 years? Do you have any idea?
I think that before I joined the board, there were other members who got grants for the general store and the former Federated Church, including elevators in both buildings, and they would be the people to ask.
Okay.
I have not been part of that.
Yeah, because if I go to legal counsel and I ask for 5 years, maybe it may need to be longer.
Yeah, I mean, the tricky thing, as you well know about grants, is that they often come, I mean, I think in our favor, as far as that's concerned, it's been quite a while since we as a town and/or the Historical Society has gone after a specific grant for accessibility, for example. So that's probably in our favor, because if we, you know, if we had done all those projects and we're coming back for more regularly, they just tend to not frown on that, but sort of say, well, you gotta wait a little longer. So, you know, I mean, I think that it's a real combination of the cycles of the grants, the type, the
Right,
nature of the
right.
grants, and when they're available, and then the availability of people to complete the grant applications, et cetera. So I think that's a hard question to answer
And
accurately.
then how
but-
long is it gonna take to get the work done? I mean,
Yeah,
it
exactly.
may only take 9 months to get a grant, but then it might take 3 years to have
Right.
the work accomplished.
Hope-
For example.
hopefully it wouldn't, But,
Yeah,
but it could.
But you
yes.
probably need several things for this building. I mean,
Yes.
and it wouldn't hurt if we wanted to apply for 15 different grants.
Right.
Maybe we only get 3, but hey,
Right.
that's good.
Yeah.
Great. Howard?
I have at various times assisted with this sort of a procurement of grants, and I can offer this. There's basically two kinds of grants. There's grants that come from government agencies where there has to have been an appropriation to fund them. And if they run out of money, you wait until they get more. But then there's also grants that are given by foundations. Foundations are required by the IRS to disburse annually a fixed percentage of their assets. I should say not of assets, of income from the assets. So those are on an annual basis. And of course, it's a good idea to get in earlier in their fiscal year before they've granted it all. But two very different situations. One, they're obliged to pass out money this year. The other one, they're not going to pass out any money until some legislative body lets them have the money.
No, I mean, that's what I was saying about the time frame on the grants also, is that, you know, they're predictable to a certain degree, but as you said, you know, if HUD money, for example, doesn't come through, then there isn't grant money available through various Vermont programs for certain things, whether you fall under HUD or USDA or, you know, but that's all governed by dispersion of funds essentially, so.
And also, I should mention, within foundation grants, there are some foundations that will only make matching grants.
Right.
The Freeman Foundation was, and to the best of my knowledge still is, an example of that. They are the wealthiest foundation in Vermont.
Yeah.
They want someone else to come in, and then they will make up the difference.
Yeah.
So, but that, in terms of the Historical Society, is a way to leverage money. If you already got some money, then go to people who make who will match money.
Thank you, Howard.
So we're gonna check with legal counsel
So I will
on
send this
the
over
terms.
tomorrow
Okay.
and bring it back to the table
Great.
and try to push in for a response
Okay.
for the next meeting.
So should we come to the next meeting?
Let me reach out to you, Caroline.
Okay.
Hopefully it won't be the day of the meeting, okay? Just check in with me, okay? It's been kind of crazy around here. So, but thank you for coming. I
And
appreciate it.
I would say in direct answer to your question, Tom, my guess would be not necessarily, it's more sort of our end of it, of thinking about
Right.
it. You know, I mean, I think this is likely to continue somewhat in the way it has, where,
Right.
you know, it's a negotiation.
Yes.
So, you
Yeah.
know, we'll touch base with legal counsel, we'll send you a document related to that and an explanation, and then if you have questions you want aired in open session, then yeah, certainly come back, but otherwise, let's bounce it back and forth until we think we're close to where we want to be.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Town manager's report.
I didn't really prepare one.
You're fired.
But don't. Sit down, sit
Careful
down,
what
sit
you
down.
say. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I just want to announce the broadband survey is due on March 17th, by the end of the business day. We have had responses, but Alyssa last week sent out postcards. So we'll see. We're still trying to push the survey. The numbers are still a little low for
Yeah.
many towns, but they're hoping,
The number of responses.
yes, from Wyndham County.
500 last, when they sent out the report.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And Putney was kind of abysmal. It
yeah.
was disappointing.
It
It's
was
hard to
because,
get people.
How many
to-
responses?
We had like
So far?
30 or something last time we checked.
30?
yeah.
How many people?
1%.
But
And that
they're
was
looking,
before I sent out the
Yeah.
postcards too.
and they're looking for 20% overall from the county.
I'll go home and make up the-
Yeah.
The
And
other,
I had to kind of target it too because there were so many addresses that it would have just cost like $500.
Right, of course, yeah.
So I did all post office boxes because that would get,
The most people for the least,
Yeah.
yeah.
right, and then I did like the roads that were sort of, you know,
on the
farther,
outskirts.
farther on the outskirts, away from Route 5,
That's smart.
where they would probably be less likely to have.
And what you sent out, like 430 something?
435?
Yeah. So we're hoping to
Which is
get
like
some more
a quarter of
responses,
what it
but,
was.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't twist anybody's arm. And the library also has computers available to go online.
So if people want to do that, they go to the Wyndham Regional Commission's website,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a link directly to do that.
Yeah, and there's information on social media, as we know. There's the sandwich board out.
And we
here.
have a link from our site.
Yes, on our website, there's a link.
And there are paper copies here.
Yes.
And at the library.
Yep,
Anywhere else?
no.
What about sending paper copies home in the kids' school bags?
You know, I thought we were gonna do that, give them to the PTO so they could, they were at town meeting,
Yeah.
so,
Yeah, it's not a lot of time to respond.
6 days.
right.
I mean, yeah.
Or the postcard has the
Link,
link. Do we have extra would it be possible to just send the postcards home?
oh, maybe. Because it's got the little scan bar
You
on
have
there,
some
too.
printed
Yeah.
postcards.
I have a couple left, I'd have to do some more.
Yeah.
That's a good idea, that might work too.
It would have to be done tomorrow,
Yeah,
Right.
soon.
because it's the 11th.
Do you want to stay here tonight?
No, just,
Thanks for the offer.
we're hoping the other
Maybe next
towns
time.
get their 50%.
Mr. Fairman?
Working via the school is a very good idea, because certainly students are especially in need of good internet service at home.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So,
Isn't there a school email
There
blast?
is, if you,
They could do that,
they
they,
could
I could send them
definitely-
that information and they could email it to us.
Yeah.
yeah,
That'd
and
be a
they
good
could do it
idea.
tomorrow.
Yeah, that'd be a good idea.
They could also, they have a phone call blast that they can do, where they could just say, please go to this.
The alert system.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so it could go out over both. And some people pick up on more on one than on the other.
So moving on, the Route 5 bridge is gonna start ramping up. Renault Brothers appears to be the contractor, so there is a meeting at the bridge on April 2nd at 11 a.m. I've invited, Tom knows about it, Brian, I've told him about it. There'll be other people there, the state. And then that same evening, there's a public informational meeting, a second one, at the fire station at 5:30. So the state and the engineer will be there to answer any other questions that might come up last minute.
And when is the project due to start?
It'll probably be shortly like thereafter, because they need to be finished. The bridge needs to be open by July
July.
5th.
yeah.
But there might be some more work into August, so I'll have more details on April 2nd. So. And then, of course, there's the school vote, the budget vote on March 17th. I think it's all over town, it's on the board too, I forget what time it is, but,
I wanna say 6:30.
and it's at BUHS. So very important, school budget vote, March 17th in Brattleboro. If you need more details, please call.
Is it on our website?
It is on the website. And it's all over social media,
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
yeah, people need to come out.
Mr. Fairman?
Do I understand correctly that there is only one polling place for the Wyndham Southeast School Board budget?
Yes.
It's a floor vote,
Yes.
Yeah.
It's not Australian ballot?
No.
Oh, I assumed it was because they usually are.
The budget?
No, not for the supervisory union,
Okay.
I don't think, right? No, it's usually a floor.
Right,
I mean-
we used to vote it, yeah.
From the floor,
Yes,
right.
yeah. Yeah.
Wonder how many.
That's a meeting to present the budget to be voted on, correct?
Right.
Yeah,
So they'll vote on it there and then.
exactly.
Correct.
Similar to the way we did it in town meeting.
I wonder how many
Historically.
people will show up.
Historically, not a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you base it on the high school budget vote, it's, I think there was like 6 of us the last time I went from Putney, so not many.
Yeah, small.
I could, and Jonathan could correct me on that, but it was close.
It wasn't.
And it was only a 100 and some odd people total,
Yeah.
I think,
Yeah.
as I recall. Which is sort of typical.
Yeah,
Six.
and most of them are from Brattleboro. It's
Right.
not many of the outlying towns.
That's all I
Hopefully
have.
more will show up. If it's not canceled.
Yeah.
Right,
Do you have anything more for us?
no.
Okay. Warrants to treasurer. Tom, were you waiting for something? Did you have something else going on?
Did you want me to?
Were we gonna,
Yeah, I think in other
Other
business,
okay, okay.
I'll.
Because I didn't want
Are
to
you-
bring that up under town manager.
okay, are you guys good with me on that? Or-
Yeah, yeah.
Cause I've got other stuff I gotta get.
That's fine.
get going.
Okay.
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 Thank you.
So I'll make a motion to approve and execute the warrants as presented upon completion of review.
And I second that.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Or wait, all in favor? Wait.
Any discussion?
Any
Yeah.
discussion, thank you. No, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so payroll warrant dated March 13th in the amount of $19,455.95. In this warrant, there were 2 firefighters that went through training.
Good.
So there is an extra bonus in there.
Okay.
So when they finish the training, it's like $1,000. So it's an incentive.
Oh, is that right?
Yes.
Who were they and what was the training?
I think it was firefighter 1, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Rory does, and
yeah, Rory and Matt, is it Matt? Yeah. Does they have to be certified?
it's not the first one
Go
they
to-
completed either, though, they've both completed another one also.
There's
They
nothing
probably had first.
here for Rory though. He
What was
didn't,
that?
but Rory didn't get, I assume that's Richard. His nickname is Rory.
Right.
Oh, I see. I was
Yeah.
looking at the wrong.
You're okay.
I don't know about that, but.
You're doing fine.
Do we have to change where the names are on there, or does it matter? And how they're, your first, last, second?
Doesn't matter to me.
It doesn't matter to me.
It doesn't specify what each one is, right? It just has
No.
their names. Good, because I don't know if I know how.
That's.
That happened 1 year. And then after a while, we had to figure it out.
Straighten it out, yeah.
It's simple, but don't ask me.
It's weird though, it's like, once you figure it out, you're like, oh yeah.
Yeah, because you don't do it.
But it takes you forever to figure it
Yeah.
out.
Oh, are we ready for the next one? Sorry.
Sure.
This one's gonna hurt.
Accounts payable dated, this is March 13th to March 13th. Can I,
The date is, can we just adjust it? It's
Yes.
2/29 to March 13th.
thank you. So accounts payable dated February 29th, 2020 to March 13, 2020 in the amount of $1,124,243.20. It's the last payment to the school. If we
Which is
did,
all of it.
if we did not have that, it would have been small, like smaller than the last
42,000.
one. So,
All right. Well, we're thankful for our kids' education.
I'm not gonna make a comment. Yeah.
It's out of your hands anyway.
I know.
so, our medical insurance went up because we added, a highway department employee and a spouse, and, oh, it's a family plan, actually. So, it's a 2-person plan?
No, 2 families.
So we added 2 family plans in the highway department.
All these $66
Those are.
payments to individuals. Are
Yep.
those
For ballot
Ballots.
clerks.
ballot, oh, okay, that
Yeah,
makes sense.
For counting. For being at the elections.
And just out of curiosity, why doesn't that fall under payroll?
It's always been done this way, so.
Because we don't wanna have them on payroll for one.
Yeah,
They
no,
might
I
not
don't
do
know.
it next year too,
Yeah.
they're like,
Right.
might be somebody different all the time.
You put somebody in payroll too, you have to do, well. no.
Withholding, et cetera.
Right,
Yeah.
the withholding you do, but,
This is what you're talking about with the insurance.
yes,
going on. Okay.
yeah. It's just, yeah, we have no control over that. We might next year, because we have a
Yes.
solution.
Education is expensive.
I'm hoping that's an overpayment, and we'll see a little
Get
bit
some back.
What is that?
$12.46.
Really?
Has that happened?
7,000. We laugh, we might have to pay in too, so don't laugh.
Yeah. Hopefully then it's $12.46.
Right, right,
Yeah, right.
there you go. So
What's
the-
fire tech and safety for?
That must be something for Tom.
Well, yeah,
Let me check, is it a big one?
10 grand.
It's part of the grant.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah.
Since it's around one year, that makes sense, yeah.
else, is it in here?
Yeah.
Highlands and Fisher fuel delivery, have we changed
That's Irving,
our Highlands? Right, so,
they're propane,
oh, okay,
yeah. Town garage.
not Highlands and Fisher, just Highlands Fuel.
Yeah, that threw me off too when I first saw it.
Oil prices are plummeting.
Yeah,
Irving has called me 3 times in the last week trying to get me to sign up for fixing of #2 oil that they will sell me for $8.92 a gallon.
Who was that?
Irving,
Somebody said oil went up,
Oh,
so I'm curious when I call my
that's
oil
$1
company.
less than I paid 3 months ago from Coda and Coder.
Wow.
It is plummeting right now, but you have to sign up for a fixed amount.
jump on it, right.
Yeah,
And propane too, that it's down to
cash.
$1.39.
Yeah, it might be worth,
You
I mean,
prepay, you have to prepay a fixed amount of oil,
well, which we do.
which you dig up.
So, we might want to explore that
Could bring
sooner rather than later.
Now,
Of
April
course.
1st, I'm gonna put bids out
Yeah.
on the propane and
Yeah.
the heating oil.
Yeah,
Because I was behind the 8 ball this past year and I won't do that again.
Especially right now.
Right. And I am shopping around this year.
I just paid $2.60 a gallon for delivery right now, but I needed delivery right
Right.
now. And then I was like, oh, probably next week it'll be
Yeah, this woman.
20% less.
Calling me 3 times and
Do we have
it was
these out for-
$2.22 and then it was $2.02 and now it's under $2, which is
Okay.
good. Sign up, we're trying to
promote this.
promote this. I almost did, I hate changing people that I've been with for a long time, and Coda's always been good to me.
Yeah.
We're gonna add up the difference, $1,000 a year. How much oil do we run here?
Other business?
So I just wanted to talk a little bit about, this is new for the two of you, but Karen and Tom and I sat down just to chat this morning, and I know Karen and Tom have already been working on this, but to start thinking about our response, not to start thinking about, but to continue thinking about our responsibility in coronavirus if it becomes significant. Tom, it's part of our emergency operations plan to have, things in place for that, but we're aware, we're aware that we need to be well prepared, but we don't want to jump the gun. And the thing that's tricky about this particular issue is that, we might end up with 4 cases in Putney, we might end up with 40 cases, 400 cases, 2,000 cases. We have no way of knowing.
Right.
And the other thing that's tricky about it is that might happen in a week or a month or 6 months or 2 years. So how to prepare for that and be both sort of fiscally responsible and not overdo it is tricky. So I just basically, what we talked about is Tom staying, the most important thing people can do is to stay informed. And our source for information, and it should be anybody else's source for information, is the Vermont Department of Health. We're going to put a link on our website to
It's
that.
there already.
And the CDC. with
Well,
Vermont
it's
Department of
really
Health
Vermont
goes-
Department of Health, and then
Right.
Vermont Department of Health links you, if you go to the Department of Health site, it links you to CDC articles, but our local protocol should be driven by the Vermont Department of Health, because you can go to the CDC site and see things for Seattle, Washington, which don't apply to us, obviously. I know that's certainly needless to say, but, so really, the recommendation to Tom as our emergency operations manager is to follow the Vermont information. So we're doing that, monitoring it closely. I've already, because of my role at Putney School, I've already been in conversation about this at Putney School. You both might have seen today that John McLaren from Landmark emailed all of us to just let us know that they're thinking about it and considering, the various ways they're going to be looking at it. So I just wanted to sort of let people know that we're thinking about it. wash your hands a lot, you know, social, not social isolation, but social separation, you know,
Distancing.
being wise, keep yourself,
Yeah,
yeah.
distance, like 6 feet.
6 feet
That's
and,
what they're
you know,
saying.
large gatherings, that's your choice at this point. I think that, you know, one of the things they're talking about a lot at the CDC level is decreasing, leveling the curve essentially. So, you know, what we don't want to do is have big spike in number of cases and then drop off, because that's what overwhelms the healthcare system. You know, we're going to get the number of cases that we're going to get almost regardless. I mean,
Right.
we're, you know, we can all be careful, and we can probably reduce the number of cases we would get one way or the other by being careful. But if we can slow that spread, if and when it comes, that's going to be to everybody's benefit. You know, a couple other things that we talked about was, you know, the fact that a lot of our volunteer folks tend to be in a higher risk because they tend to be retired.
Right.
You know, they tend to be a higher risk demographic, and so I think if we get to a point where we as a town need to really come together, we're gonna have to push hard on the younger, healthier people too, to say, you know, this is a role you need to take up. But we certainly, you know, we're not panicking, we don't wanna panic, and we don't have any known cases even in the county, much less in town. The state of Vermont is watching, I think currently 154 cases, some have been resolved. It was over 200, I think, total, but some have been released from it. So, yeah, total number, 215, but the completed monitoring was 59, so only one positive test. But, you know, we're paying attention. Tom is intending to dramatically limit access to the fire station. He's exploring getting it thoroughly cleaned and disinfected and then limiting access. You know, I mean, one of our best defenses is going to be to have a healthy group of people at the fire department. So we're going to try and limit their exposure as much as possible. But I also, you know, there has been some discussion of whether people should start going out and, you know, trying to make contact with folks, et cetera. And I would say at this point, no. I think if you have a specific concern about somebody, please notify either Karen or Tom.
Correct.
And we will look into that. But the last thing we want to do is
Have people out
potentially
there.
spread anything, because, you know, as we're watching, the incubation periods are it's still not a peg down number. They're saying it's typically between 2 and 5 days, but up to 14 days. You know, the last thing we want folks is going out and spreading something around that we don't otherwise have spread around. And many of our most vulnerable people are likely to be reasonably socially isolated, and in this situation, that's not a bad thing.
Right.
So, but also, you know, the question of if the school has to shut down, and not that the school is our responsibility per se, because they're
Right,
their own
right.
entity, but the question, for example, of our more vulnerable, food insecure student body, you know, what can we be? And I'm sure the supervisory union is all talking about this, and I know Tom has been in touch, you know, Tom's been in touch with everybody. So, just to.
And the
just to-
food bank is thinking about it,
I'm
and
sure,
the
yeah.
Putney Food Shelf is
Yeah.
actively thinking about, they've all
Yeah.
taken measures to sterilize,
Yeah.
sanitize, and I know that Putney Food Shelf said that they don't typically do delivery, but in an emergency situation, they
Right.
may be able to come up with something.
Yeah.
So,
No, and I think in that, again, along those lines, just, you know, being very thoughtful about, you know, those could be food drops on a
Yeah.
porch. They don't need
Yes.
to be
There
contact.
doesn't need to be
because
any
we don't
contact.
wanna-
Yep.
Because we don't wanna
yeah,
risk that, et cetera. But again, you know, if anybody is aware of somebody who they feel is either at risk or is a risk,
Well,
please,
check.
please let us know and we'll make sure Tom certainly is willing and comfortable doing welfare checks for people. So.
And Sheriff Anderson said that they have a system set up to do,
They do, and I was not aware of that,
yeah,
so we
To
can
do welfare
post
checks.
that.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
To do
yeah.
phone call
Right.
welfare checks, and then if they don't get a response.
then they can follow
So if
up.
there's anybody that's in your life that you're concerned about, you can reach out to the sheriff's office and they
Yeah.
can set that up for them.
Yeah,
211 also.
information, yeah,
Yeah, they can call this number to get assistance.
yeah,
So, Tom is the contact point person. And like Josh said, they can call here too, but we're gonna get more information out. I'm gonna send you what I put on the website, so you
Okay.
can get it on social media.
Yeah. All right.
Maybe post some things in our usual places in
Yeah.
town.
Yeah.
But
and we're gonna wanna consider, depending on how things progress, you know, the model for meetings or public hearings, et cetera. I mean,
Right.
we've already sort of talked about that with,
yeah.
you know, and none of us wanna jump the gun. I mean, I
No.
don't, that, you know, we,
I'm
but
gonna move my chair over here now.
But we all want to be cautious because,
Yeah.
you know, the fact is that, you know,
Proactive and.
proactive is going to be way
Yes.
more in our
Right,
interest than
right.
reactive. You know, and again, what are we looking at? We have no idea.
We don't know what to
but-
expect.
But, you know, hope for the best, prepare for the worst, and
Yeah.
see what happens, so.
And Karen handed me this guidance for people in close contact with a person who tested positive for COVID-19. So people who have been identified by the health department as close contact to someone who tested positive for COVID-19 should stay home, practice social distancing, and monitor their health for 14 days. Social distancing, as Josh said, means remaining out of congregate settings, avoiding mass gatherings, and maintaining approximately 6 feet or 2 meters from others whenever possible. And the health department will be in contact with you regularly during that monitoring period.
Yeah.
If you develop symptoms, call your healthcare provider right away. Before you go to an appointment, let your healthcare provider know that you are being monitored for novel coronavirus. Call health department epidemiology, thank you, and infectious disease staff at 802-863-7240 and avoid contact with others. And some everyday preventative measures you can take: wash your hands often with soap and water for at least 20 seconds. If soap and water are not available, use alcohol-based hand sanitizer, and that should be rubbed in until it's completely dry. Sometimes people don't do that. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth with unwashed hands. Avoid close contact with people who are sick. Stay home when you are sick. Cover your cough or sneeze with a tissue, then throw the tissue in the trash. And clean and disinfect frequently touched objects and surfaces. It's really flu measures.
And just one more thing I would add, you know, if you out of courtesy, if nothing else, to our staff here at Town Hall, if you have questions that can be answered by phone, call instead of stopping by.
Right.
You know, just limiting exposure for everybody for a period of time. I mean, we're not looking hopefully to do this for a long time, but again, we don't know what the time frame involved, but particularly, and Karen and I talked today and I noticed some signs have been put up. but
Yes.
Particularly if you have any symptoms, please make a phone call instead of showing up. Because we would, even if it's just a cold, all of us want to keep as healthy as we can right now, and so less exposure is better. You know, as per recommendation, if you are sick with something that's respiratory in nature, wearing a mask is not a bad idea. If you are not sick, wearing a mask is not recommended. So-
No, it takes masks away from people who are sick.
Right.
And it also actually increases the
Yeah.
likelihood of you holding those germs
Yeah.
close to your mouth where you might get them, so.
Yeah.
But if you are sick, wearing a mask is recommended, so.
So you're not spraying germs everywhere.
So, that's that. The other thing I wanted to just quickly mention, you know, something that came up for me and from town meeting, totally separate subject, and I know we'll talk more about this, but just sort of the model of how we've looked at purchasing particularly large ticket capital, you know, the discussions both around whether we should be having designated funds for those, but also timeframes for things. I think that we're in a good position right now, as far as time frame is concerned, where we're not looking at purchasing another truck for the highway department for roughly 3 years.
Correct.
And, you know, I think that this, the fire engine article passed, as most people I'm sure know. You know, what we shouldn't do, what we're not doing if we go ahead with this purchase, and it all has to fall into the criteria of the agreement, obviously. But the value in buying a better quality truck was displayed clearly to us in the fact that we purchased a lesser quality truck last time around, and now we're paying for it sooner
Right.
than we would have had to. And
Yeah.
so I think that, you know, for me, those factors of, you know, can we get longer life out of the trucks? And I think we need to explore, you know, we've been on this 10-year rotation. You know, maybe we look at 12, maybe we look at 15, but I think that, you know, we've been having that discussion, but it also came up clearly at town meeting, and I just wanted to
Yeah.
sort of make clear that I think those are good and important discussions for us to be having about how we manage those larger ticket purchases. But again, we're in a good position right now. We've got, you know, good interest rates on everything we have purchased, but let's look at it before we have to do it again.
So I want to
I agree.
clarify
I agree.
also,
Sorry.
it's okay. So there was a question about the trade-in value.
Uh-huh.
So I did have the notes, but I just didn't dig deep enough. So Brian feels that we should be able to get at least 25,000 for a trade-in.
Right.
What I want to do is go back and look at the trade-in values on the vehicles, maybe go back 5 years. Because I think that can help us determine, you know, do we wait, you know, build up that equipment fund, like we were talking about, and see if you can stretch it. Now, the other thing too is if you stretch a truck longer than 10 years, you risk like the emissions going on it, which could be a $30,000
Very expensive.
cost to
Absolutely.
fix it.
Yeah.
So, and I think Brian's the better judge on the equipment because he's around it all the time. But,
Yes, I wouldn't disagree with his ability to judge that,
Yeah.
but, you know, our role here, we're in charge of the purse strings.
Correct.
And,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, if we make the decision
Yeah.
that we're gonna get 12 or 15 years out of our trucks, you know, if we learn, you know, I mean, maybe that's not a wise choice, and maybe we can do the homework to find that out
I think we
in
need to do the
advance.
research, yes,
But,
and it can
you
be
know,
thorough.
Of course,
Right.
the dealerships, not to their fault, but they want us to buy a new truck as often as we're possibly willing to.
They're in the business of selling trucks.
Exactly.
There's something
Not
more
surprising.
pieces to it too. It's every individual vehicle is different.
Right.
So
Right.
many
Absolutely.
vehicles
Yeah.
last, I can tell you from working on them every day, I can point at the cars on the road and the repair rate and how much you paid on maintenance on it because of the way it was made. And each individual one can be affected better or worse depending on how it's used.
Right.
So a lot of this will have to do with how they're used, but it'll also have to do with our research about who else is driving Western Star trucks and how many miles they're getting out of them. And
Yeah.
do they typically, this model this year, have emission problems after 10 years, or maybe they don't have any at all?
Right.
And if we do that research instead of just sticking to a 10-year program, we might get 2 or 3 years of not paying for that truck that we
Right.
can put that money in the account. And I
Yes.
think anything we do to make ourselves more solvent will be great.
Yeah, I agree.
Every
Great.
dollar we don't spend on interest, even if the rate is good, is better. That's
Yeah.
what I think.
Yeah, and I think, you know, we have a responsibility to look at, you know, I mean, I don't think we've been making poor choices in that respect, but I think we could make different choices. And I think that unless we at least push the concept of those different choices, we won't really know. I mean, we've had very good luck with 10 years. As far as going back and looking at trade-ins, one of the problems that's gonna skew that for us is that we always had Max. Mac had a guaranteed
Right.
trade-in. So I don't know whether Western Star offers any sort of guaranteed trade-in, and of course, that was a Mac tactic to get you,
Right.
again, not to their fault, but, you know, you trade it in within 10 years and you're gonna get $25,000 for it, and that's what it will, we'll guarantee that, doesn't matter the condition of the truck. Mac stood by that, and whether Western Star does the same. The other thing I don't know is, you know, do you get 25,000 for a 10-year-old vehicle and 22,000 for a 12-year-old vehicle, or do you
Right.
get 1,000 for a 12-year-old vehicle?
Yeah.
And if we kept that truck for one more year, would the maintenance and repairs be $5,000, or would it be
Or $65,000.
$20,000? Right, $25,000.
Yeah,
And we're only gonna know that by looking at doing some research. But,
Yeah,
you know, my guess is that I would think that we would find interesting information doing that research. That might help us.
and you know, the one other part to that we haven't looked at, I don't think, but I know we've had conversation about it, but I don't think we've looked at it all that, is that concept that we did with the fire truck of doing a, you know, substantial rehab on, you know, I mean, you take a 10-year-old truck and say, okay, what are the 18 things that are gonna break?
Right.
Let's replace those and run it for 6 more years,
Right.
you know, that might be worth doing too.
and you
So,
did that with one of the Macs, right, the 05?
We did at one
Yeah.
point, yeah.
Because it went another 5 years?
I don't think it was quite that much, but I think we got 3 out of it anyway, something like that. So, but I think David's right, you know, that's good. Statistics will tell us whether it's a good idea or not.
Right.
And teasing that information out may not be easy, but it is information that's available, so.
Or would Brian do some of that research, or does that all fall on you?
Apparently, he had done it
Okay.
years ago, do you recall that?
On the Mac,
No,
on the Western Stars.
no, about taking, keeping them longer and then building an
Building,
equipment fund.
right, exactly.
So he had it all mapped out,
But I think
apparently.
part of that also was a contribution from the town, not just payments that were being made from the truck. He had actually talked to me about that a little
Yeah.
bit.
Well,
So do you build a fund to a point where, through contributions during those periods and not payments on the truck because you're past the payments,
Right,
would build it after a certain number of years
Yes.
to a point
Yeah.
of being able to get the next truck?
Yeah.
But would we be able to cycle it fast enough to continue to get enough
we're gonna have
trucks?
to look at that.
I mean, that seems like, that's a pretty steep savings rate, but.
Right,
well, yeah, I mean, I think that, you know, as it is now, we rarely, if ever, finance for more, well, the excavator being that's a lease to own.
it is, yeah.
But
10
otherwise,
years.
we do 5 years on everything. So we have a 5-year period on each of those trucks that we're not paying.
Right.
You know, and depending on how we look at it, you say, okay, well, we're making a $35,000 a year contribution toward
Right.
this for
So
5
you
years.
take that
Or you
and
say
put
we
it
do,
in that fund.
or you do
Right.
17.5 every year
Right.
over 10 years, and
Yeah.
it's the same, you know, it just depends. But
Yeah.
and I'm not disagreeing with you, David, but I think the idea of a town being solvent is a little bit of, you know, we don't have the need to be solvent, and
Right.
not that we shouldn't reduce our debt,
Right, that's what I meant.
but nobody's gonna call our, you know, we're not at risk of getting our trucks repoed, so.
I don't think we are.
Right.
I just think every dollar we don't spend, that we don't have to spend is a good thing.
Is not a bad thing.
That's
Yeah.
what I'm pointing at.
Yeah,
Yeah, kind of want
Not
to go the other
increasing
way.
taxes, maybe even
Yeah,
reducing them a
yeah.
little bit would be
That would
lovely.
that would be a great thing, yeah.
well, and, you know, does changing those model, I mean, that, you know, that
Would that-
question
yeah.
of, you know, if you blow an engine in year 11, you just skewed the whole thing. So, you know, that's a tough decision, and it's
Right.
it's risk and
It's a
return.
risk,
I mean,
yeah.
you know, it's what it
That's where
is.
the research would help.
Yes,
Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
so, and it can be done. We have
Yeah.
a year.
definitely. Well, we got a couple of years. Right, 2023, right?
Now, we want to do the research now, though.
That's
Yes.
exactly right,
Yeah.
so we can
Yeah.
decide during that
Yes.
period of time.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we did learn some lessons too, at town meeting, and I did meet with the staff, and we went over things that, worked well and things that we need
Not so well,
we need to consider for next year.
yeah.
So, but overall, I think You did a good job.
I want to commend the town clerk's office and you for the sanitation level and our mic.
Yeah.
That was amazing.
That
Like
was
our
Steve's-
pens were sanitized.
Steve,
So,
that was Steve's idea
yeah,
about the mic.
that was,
Steve,
Yeah.
Steve
Yes,
Voorhees,
Voorhees,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
And I also want to thank, we didn't do this at town meeting, but everyone that is on a committee or board that volunteers, thank you very much.
Yes.
Because without you,
It all makes a difference.
you know, our planning commission is like down to 2 people, which is not a quorum.
Yeah,
So we need volunteers and we need people to call us and ask what's available.
young people,
Young.
well, all people,
All
but,
people.
but young people too.
yes.
I'm gonna post something on iPutney, but I did want to thank everybody that volunteers.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, do we have any other business?
No, I think this one,
Executive session needed?
no.
Okay, our next meeting date is March 25th. And,
And I'll move to adjourn.
I'll second that.
okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.